Hello, my name is Juliet Phillips, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am from St. Louis, Missouri. Some live theater shows that I've seen is Hamilton, Mean Girls, as well as Cats, the musical. And some fun facts about me is that I swim here for the team at Binghamton, as well as I was born in Germany, and my mom's from Peru, my dad's from England, so I have 5 citizenships. 3 words to describe how I felt about the film was invigorating, interesting, and educated. I feel personally that I've learned a lot more than I already have known about theater, especially that just more than just like the surface level, because I didn't know that much information going into theater. And so honestly, learning more about American history as well as current events and everything like that, or kind of connecting to current events actually from Hamilton, was very eye-opening for me. And I believe that the play was about how everyone was fighting for what they believe in, and despite it being about the war or family or about themselves, they just had something to prove and they had something to just show. And I thought that was very well thought out by the director. And the artists, honestly, the director, the artists wanted the audience to think about how people were affected by this war, as well as American history as a whole. And I think they were very successful in doing so, because I know so much more about presidents, like American past history, than I did before, prior to the movie or the musical. And I also now know more about, like, it's like knowing more about how we as people have affected history ourselves. So it's kind of connecting to that, and I think that was very successful. I also want to discuss about the idea of owning your own, because I learned a lot from that, since it's kind of connecting to Hamilton about how you need to be independent and not just like someone who follows a team. So I thought that was very important, because owning your own actually symbolized what Hamilton was trying to portray throughout the musical. And I also learned that the hiring statistics this upcoming year and like in the past are growing rapidly. So more people want to join the theater and be in the theater, and theater spots and theater openings are as limited as possible. So it's very hard for people to obtain jobs at theater and musicals. And I believe that that was just something that I didn't recognize, because I thought that anyone could join, especially if they wanted to be like an extra, but I didn't realize that it would be so hard to obtain a job. And so overall, the 5 articles, what stood out to me in each one of them actually was a lot, but I wanted to start with the beginning. And the first article was called Open Letter, and the main point of it was to talk about how people of color have been suppressed. So they were talking about this letter that was written by 300 people to the white American theater, and they were calling out discriminations and how they felt oppressed all these years. They used very colorful language, especially like talking about how this is the time, especially after George Floyd, because this was at the time of a lot of protests. And so now that 22,000 people have signed this, they all have just talked about how they felt that white American theater is mainly towards white actors, white directors, white, like everyone's very white, no one's diverse, and they're just talking about how they believe that there needs to be a new norm. And so the second article was actually the letter itself. It was firsthand evidence, and it used very powerful language, especially like the "we have watched, we've seen you, we have always seen you, and we've watched you pretend not to see us." That actually stood out to me, because that influenced how I thought about theater and how other people may portray theater. The third article is called "The Casting After Colorblindness." So its main point is talking about how it was critics talking about how Hamilton has a lot of people of color, and saying that they have black privilege, or like people of color, or like women because they're oppressed, that directors are more inclined to hire them in musicals, which is just, that's the only first part of the article. I had to pay for a subscription to fully access it, so I couldn't finish the article. But that's what the main part was, I believe, in the first section. And I actually found it astounding because, honestly, they're just trying to downplay how American theater is actually evolving rather than sticking to how it's always been. And then the fourth article is about why Hamilton is not the revolution you think it is. So the critics believe that Hamilton actually is not a very good representation of how the new norm of theater should be, because female characters didn't get enough stage time, as well as they didn't pass a specific rule. I forgot what the rule was called, but they didn't pass a specific amount of time while not talking about a male character in the musical. And so it's talking about how females are always just like subject to men, and whatever that the plot is, that they kind of incorporate themselves only as attached to the man, not themselves independently. And then it's just talking about how, because these main characters are all people of color, that white people have forgotten the implicated violence that they've participated in past these years. Well, not those people, but in their history. And so it's just kind of downplaying the history and the importance of how there was actually like segregation, and how people of color actually weren't the ones in power while they were in the theater musical. And then the fifth article was a Rolling Stone magazine talking about how Gen Z actually has very big influence in over social media, more than the other generations. So overall, I think that like it's made me realize that there's so many underlying issues in the theater world, and that we just merely just sweep it under the rug so we can just move past on. And in summary, Hamilton is not always about racism. I think it actually played a very big role in helping us contribute to these conversations that we're having in current times. And I think that that's very important for us as a new society and our identity, as well as like looking at these issues of racism as well as sexism. And so I think that the diverse casting actually was very beneficial rather than harmful. So thank you, and